Growing fishes.
Hey everybody, welcome to Growing with Fishes podcast, episode 246. This week we have Shannon from Sweetwater Aquaponics of South Africa. Thanks for joining us. You got up very early today.
Yes, I did. Thank you very much for having me. I've been looking forward to it. So I could hardly sleep very well last night. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah, we actually are going to show you guys a bunch of film from his farm. We got pictures of his farm that we'll be showing you and talking about growing in South Africa, both in soil and aquaponics. He has a really amazing aquaponic vegetable and cannabis farm, and it's going to be really awesome to check that out. We also have Fumidor. How's it going?
How's it going, folks? Cheers. Hanging out, smoking joints, and hopefully going to ask a few questions. I don't know. We'll see. Happy to learn about more aquaponics. Cheers, guys.
We are, for those of you who don't know, you can check out Fumidor on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays over on his channel, Fumidor and the Flavors.
That's it. Thank you.
So don't forget, we have our... Second, I gotta pull it up here. We'll be doing more announcements of some of the speakers for the virtual Aquaponic Cannabis Conference coming up in November shortly. We are finished up booking the second day, and we're possibly moving to even adding a third day to the conference. So it's really, really cool. And we're looking at just adding a couple more people to one or two of the panels. But we actually have panels for 3 different sized facilities. So everything from like home grow to craft grower to large scale commercial. So it'll be really, really, really cool. Also be sure to check out apmjclass.com if you're looking for a full top to bottom masterclass on aquaponic cannabis growing. We do cover all aspects of aquaponic cannabis, and we add new content all the time. I just put 4 more hours up today to the class, so we cover every aspect of it that you can think of in a video, and with tons of additional resources as well, and guides and how-tos and quick reference guides and all. Alrighty. Thanks a lot for joining us, Shannon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your farm? I'm going to go ahead and put up some footage of your farm here on the screen while you tell us about your farm. So how did you get started, and why did you decide on aquaponics there in South Africa? It's not something you hear a lot of people in SA do.
Well, it was actually through default that I stumbled across aquaponics, Stephen. I was a protea farmer. Proteas are indigenous flowers to South Africa, and I was farming proteas for export. So I do come from a farming background. And I came up to the Eastern Cape on a visit, and I stumbled across a small modular system, which I'd never seen before, and I inquired about it. And I was told there was a course going on in a small town called Salem, up the road from where I'm living now and operating from. And they were doing 5-day courses there. So I went and I did a course to get more understanding of aquaponics. And then I met my partner, Andrew Diago, who's initially a builder, but was obviously intrigued with the future of the scarcity of water in South Africa, and decided that he'd want to try aquaponics commercially. So he asked me if I thought we could do it commercially, and I said I think so, but it had never been done commercially in South Africa that I'd known of. So we embarked on that journey, and we approached our consultant, and we designed big commercial systems based on the smaller modular systems which he had designed. So it was a bit of a journey doing the scale up, but very exciting. And we put everything together, and we were basically the first aquaponics farm in South Africa producing food for the commercial market. And we were obviously pushing the chemical-free scenario, everyone going organic in the world. So we jumped onto that bandwagon and pursued this. So we opened up a company of fresh vegetables, and we supplied supermarkets and game reserves and private schools in the area. And it went very well. And we did that for 3 years, and then the cannabis industry opened up. And so we applied for a license, and we'd never done it before. I did some trials to prove to my partner that it would work in aquaponics. against the grain. Everyone I'd approached about it had told me that it wouldn't work in aquaponics, but I was hell-bent to make it work. So I persevered. And then obviously being new to aquaponics and cannabis, it was a steep learning curve, and we learned very quickly that the systems weren't able to supply the nutrition that cannabis needed. So we actually had to double up on our media beds to improve nitrification so that the systems could supply enough nutrition. So it's been a wonderful learning curve, and we're still doing a changeover from food to cannabis. Our one big concern is monocropping. So we've also seen that as a challenge due to pest infestation in the systems. But everything we do is real IPM based. So obviously, being a biological system, we don't want to interrupt any of the biological going on in the systems. So it's actually going very well at the moment. All the pressure on the systems was focused on the aquaponic systems, which was rather unbearable for me because of the changes I had to put into the systems. So I actually had said to my partner, we had to back out of the aquaponics and focus on another grow. So we went into the ground in tunnels to do organic cannabis. So I had the biomass to provide my partner for the market. And now I've got those tunnels established and running beautifully. I'm now back into the aquaponics. I can refocus on the systems and get them up to steam as to how they should be running. So that's just basic information in a nutshell, how we started and to where we are now, Stephen.
That's awesome. So what type of cultivars are you growing there? I think that's the first question a lot of people are wondering.
Well, when we first started, we didn't have access to phytosanitary certificates for cultivars. So we were initially working on recreational strains, which we were able to import slowly but surely from seed companies. But I did have a skunk cultivar, skunk number 1, which was brought into the country in the early 80s by a friend of mine, Simon, who's a strain hunter. And I was a gatekeeper for that strain for several years, and I introduced it into the premises when we opened up the cannabis trials. And going forward, we still don't have a phytosanitary for that, but now we've created a certificate of origin for that particular strain, and I'm now also using some in-house strains and also some jinx proof just to bolster the THC count. And the skunk number 1 that I'm working with at the moment ranges between 20 to 25% THC, and that all of that is aimed at Australia as an offtake. Also, we'll be doing some breeding as well now. I'm doing some aquaponic breeding just to get because we're on the coast, so we have a lot of humidity issues. So I'm trying to breed out some humidity issues on that. But I'm using mostly American strains and that one English skunk number 1 at the moment. Also, we haven't introduced CBD into our systems. We're only going for the THC route at the moment because we are the only aquaponic license, and we believe that our product is going to be a niche product aimed at the upper market. We believe that, and we still need to achieve that. One of the biggest problems that I've had from the start with cannabis, not with food, is that the plant accumulates negative compounds like heavy metal, arsenic. I've had immense problems with arsenic build up in my plants, and you can't flush it out. We've tried different scenarios, but it doesn't work. So we really had to drill down and try and find out where the arsenic was coming from. And I've done all sorts of tests on my systems where leaching may be occurring from the stones. I've tested the source of the water because we're in a developing country, and being so, we have municipal issues in different areas with water treatment, and the water we actually use in our systems is water that's come through a reverse osmosis system from the sea. So we were informed that the arsenic is coming from the water source, and that it was coming down, was coming through the RO systems and then settling into the aquaponics, and then being taken up by the cannabis plants. So we did all sorts of water tests on that. We even thought it might be coming off the roof tiles. So we did thorough tests, and even we sent off lettuce samples to see if the lettuce was also accumulating the arsenic, and it hasn't. So it's definitely a cannabis problem. Well, not a problem, but it's almost like a canary in a mine. It's an indicator that we have an issue. And then I met Stephen on Instagram, and I just asked him the question, and incredibly, he just pointed out the problem straight away. So I'm ever grateful for that, Stephen. And he said to me that the problem was from kelp, derived from kelp. And because I had the nutrition problems in the systems, I bolstered the nutrition. Well, I thought I was bolstering the nutrition with the product called Seabrix, which is derived from kelp. It's extract, seaweed extract. And funnily enough, I was adding the arsenic to the systems myself unknowingly. So I'm very grateful, Stephen, for that. And now I'm doing this grow that I'm doing now that you're seeing on the screen it should be a clean grow. And I will demonstrate on the COAs to Stephen that hopefully that was the problem. So I look forward to testing that cannabis.
Yeah, there's quite a few people that you hear talking about in some of the other soil circles that are also running into some heavy metal issues around certain kelps and rock dusts. You know, when they're used in excess, you can totally use them in small amounts. It's just when they're used as a primary form of supplementation that it can get you. But yeah, it looks really, really nice. You can see it quite well constructed facility there. Tell us a little bit more about some of the methodology you're using for your soil growing in terms of how you're going about that with your cannabis. In fact, I can
sure
up of that too.
So the tunnels that we've got are all cannabis in the ground. It's certainly the cheapest way of growing cannabis if you compare it to all the high-tech grows that you see around the world with all the high-tech everything. We just basically put up the normal tunnels that we would use for vegetables, 30 meters by 14 meters. And we have 6 rows of 25 plants in a row, 21 plants in a row. So we get in 125 plants in a tunnel. And we space them accordingly so that they don't touch. And then we just put down drip irrigation. But the soil preparation is minimal as well. We just get an auger and we drill quite a wide hole and a deep hole into the ground. The soil here is quite a heavy clay soil, so it actually leaves basically like a ceramic pot in the ground, and then that pot we fill with a medium that we create here, which is a compost-based soil medium. We fill the holes and then plant into that, and then we just line up drip irrigations on that, and then we have 4 by 100 LED lights above them, which power them through the night. So it's very basic, but very effective, and it's where my biomass is coming from at the moment. And even in that, we don't dose at all. If we do any kind of nutritional feeding, we've been using the Seabrix base, and we haven't had any arsenic issues in that. So I'm assuming that the microbes in the soil and the basic biology in the soil are breaking down any negativity and preventing the cannabis plant from taking up the arsenic. So that's the difference that I'm thinking is working, and the difference in the soil with that nutrition. So we don't do any hydroponic feeding, just the Seabrix extract in the soil, and then some foliar spray with some lactic acid, which is basically a moringa tree-based extract, which opens the pores on the plant, and it allows the plant to basically absorb everything in a hurry. It's a new product that's made up in South Africa. So, we're feeling our way. Sorry.
I'm sorry, there was a little bit of a delay. Please tell me about the Moringa extract, because in Jamaica, that was one of the things that we were using for compost teas, but I'd love to hear more about it, because again, this is kind of across the pond, quite a ways to hear that same kind of thing being used for fertigation. Tell us more about that.
Well, I must be honest with you, Stephen. I've only just received the product and I've only just learnt about it. And I met a cannabis grower who's an indoor grower up in the Vaal recently, and he introduced me to it. And it's a brand new product that they've just basically made up in South Africa. And I'm basically the only second grower in the country who's using it. And I haven't used it as yet. I only received it this week. So I'm still doing some research on it, but I'll certainly send you the, I'll take a picture and I'll send you the breakdown of what it's made up of and its active ingredients and how it actually works so that you can study it further. And maybe you can even add to that.
Nice. Yeah, I know the skunk is pretty rare here in the States, and it's definitely in high demand for sure. What is there any other older cultivars that you guys are working out there?
Well, you know, the Durban Poison is a very old South African strain which was exported to the States, and then from that the Americans bred Girl Scout cookies, and I see that it's quite a popular strain in the States, in California. I see people like Sticky Fields is growing it, so that's interesting. That and I was informed by my friend, the strain hunter, that the Americans and Canadians are actually very hungry for African cultivars that are bred onto their original American strains for the diversity. So that's something that I've been doing as well with my friend Simon, the strain hunter, is breeding South African genetics onto American and Canadian genetics to see the outcome. And there's been some beautiful results on that. And we're talking about opening a seed company, a cannabis seed company, but we're still in the early days of the discussion with that.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you got quite a bit going on there. What type of fish are you using? Just tilapia, or have you diversified at all on that, or thought about any other species yet?
I'm using tilapia at the moment. I use Mozambicus, albino Mozambicus, and so they're orange fish. And I also use red Nile tilapia. I find that the red Nile tilapia are very slick, very hardworking fish. They're fast growing, very, very strong fish, very versatile fish. The Mozambicus don't grow as quickly, but they also don't leave as many floating feces. The red Nile tilapia tend to leave a lot more floating feces, which sort of takes longer to dissipate through the system. But I don't see that as a problem. So I do prefer the red Nile tilapia. I did design another system with our consultant for rainbow trout. And that system, it works incredibly well, especially during the winter months when tilapia tend to go dormant, because we don't have coolers or heaters in our systems, and we're outdoors, so we're very environmentally controlled, naturally so. So we don't have counters for heating and cooling yet, but that's certainly something we're looking at for the cannabis. It's something that we have to look at. With the food, it didn't really matter. It just slowed down production in winter because everything slowed down because of the coolness. But certainly with the cannabis, we want to set in even growth throughout the year. So we're having to look at putting in counters for that. So the trout worked very well, but also in South Africa, we have electricity issues with our power supplier, Eskom. We have a lot of load shedding going on, and it's very interrupted and very short notice. So everything, we have backup generators. We haven't got over to solar yet. So my point on that was that my trout systems, I actually lost all of my fish on 3 occasions due to electrical problems. Trout are very sensitive to lack of moving water and oxygen. So that happened to me a few times. So then I went back to the tilapia, just because they're a lot hardier and a lot more workmanlike and not as finicky. They don't die as quickly. If they can survive half an hour without water flow and electricity and oxygen, whereas trout can only last 10 minutes and you lose the whole lot. So they're very volatile. I do prefer working with the trout because of the capability of working through the winter, but they're a lot more tricky to work with in South Africa because of our issues.
The other species that we figured out works pretty well over in Africa and South Africa, and when I was up in Zim, is sharp-toothed catfish. African sharp-toothed catfish are another one that grows pretty fast. It's kind of like they're equivalent to like their channel catfish, I guess, for Americans that haven't seen them.
Yes, that's correct. My consultant, he's got a module working with catfish at the moment, and he raves about the fish. For us, the fish are merely a driver, and we don't actually harvest the fish for ourselves. When we do harvest fish, it's because of lack of space or overcrowding, and also obviously overcrowding and for ammonia. So we generally harvest once a year. But apparently with the catfish, they're a lot more difficult to work with, and yeah, it's not as pleasant to work with them apparently. But I haven't actually worked with them myself. But apparently they do work very well, and some people also work with them in conjunction with koi. But I haven't gone that route. I prefer to work with one species. I just like to keep it simple because there's so much else going on in the systems, the pH fluctuations and all the bacterias, and there's so much that you have to keep stable, as you're aware of, and everyone's got to be kept happy in the systems. It's your microbes, it's your plants, it's your fish. You try and keep a happy medium for all of those to work together in symbiosis.
Oh yeah, for sure. And if something gets too far out of whack, it definitely can have issues. What are some of the other crops that you're growing? I see you got lots of different types of lettuce and things like that. Tell us what about some of the other crops that you're growing.
Yeah, we've certainly tried everything. I did a lot of tomatoes in buckets, in the Dutch buckets. I did cucumbers in the media beds. They prefer the very high nitrogen. So the media beds, obviously, where your highest nitrogen levels are on point. So I did the cucumbers in the media beds, the buckets and tomatoes. I did a lot of herbs and the full range of herbs in my media beds as well. I did find that the media beds became rather volatile in summer. I found also the fish feces were clogging up the stones. We only use the stones as a natural filter, and also for oxygenation for the water running through the stones when they're doing the flood and drain. So I did a lot of herbs in there, and obviously lettuce and spinach and bok choy on the rafts. But yeah, obviously the biggest driver for us was the lettuce, the tomatoes, and the cucumbers. Then that was a daily occurrence. We'd harvest those every single day. So we started off with three modules, and we had to build up to 6 modules because of the demand, and obviously the time pressures with growth in winter. We had to obviously build enough systems to keep the lettuce going for the demand through the slow growing parts of the winter. But we are going to be putting in now counters for the water heating and cooling going forward. So, and yeah, it was all herbs. I looked at other medicinal plants, but you know, we haven't used the ceramic balls in our systems because we were informed that they tend to soak water into the balls, and then they have created a nice little breeding ground for other bacteria, heterotrophic bacteria within the balls. They're also expensive compared to the stone that we work with, and they also float around a bit. So we were just basically directed towards using the 19mm crushed stone, which is limiting for any kind of a tuber. So I haven't grown carrots or potatoes in aquaponics. I have done radishes. They do work because they're shallow and they can actually move it enough to grow, although they aren't that perfect round shape, but beautiful, and the flavors are obviously accentuated. That was one of my selling points for the food in aquaponics, is that aquaponics accentuates terpenes and flavors, and food actually tastes like real food in comparison to any other form of grow. So, you know, for me, for cannabis too, that highlighted everything for me, obviously bringing me down to the terpenes and terpene extraction. I assumed because aquaponics accentuates terpenes and flavors and aromas in food, it would certainly do the same with cannabis, and it definitely does. It definitely bolsters cannabis in every form and manner. So it's extremely exciting for that as well.
Very cool. What type of pests have you had to deal with out there in South Africa? I know our biggest issue was the grasshoppers.
Yeah, no, we didn't have a grasshopper issue. Belgruder bug is a big problem. Leaf miners are a big problem for the tomatoes. Aphids and thrips on the lettuce. But as a grower, you know, if your systems are healthy and your plants are healthy, your invasion is going to be less. And obviously, we use real RPM, we use the yellow tapes all around the systems. So yeah, we get all the general pests, and obviously the fruit fly specifically the cucurbit fruit fly with cucumbers is an absolute nightmare, because we have wild fig trees growing around us, so they breed rampantly around us, so they come into the systems, and I mean one female can sting your entire crop in a day, it seemed. So it was very difficult with that. But cannabis, we don't have so many issues. We obviously have red spider mite, but I'm also introducing predator mites into the systems now for the first time. So I'm just building up to that now, and just cleaning up the systems with harmful pests that I have now. So I'm going to do a power roll spray just to go and sort all that out before I do the introduction of the predatory mites. So, but it's progressively going forward, as aquaponics is a very progressive form of farming, and now with the cannabis too. So we're constantly learning, but it's extremely exciting and keeps me going. It's wonderful.
Very cool. What are some of the, you got tips and tricks you found along the way for, you know, your aquaponic systems? I noticed you had kind of a different design with your sump tank and your fish tank. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, because it's kind of different?
Sure. It's a relatively new design. So our sumps they consist of a 5,000 liter plastic tank, and on the inside of that sump we elevate a 2,500 liter tank on legs, so that the top of the sumps actually are aligned and level. So we put legs on that inner sump. So there's inner sump and outer sump. And the outer sump is, so you'll see if you ever look at the fish house design on the fish tanks, there's a constant siphoning system that's in place there. So that's constantly drawing out the ammonia from the base of the fish tanks and feeding into the main body of the water in the sump. So it's continuously diluting the ammonia into that outer part of the sump. So the fish feces and the ammonia goes into the outer part of the sump, and it works on a centrifugal force system, because the water all flows in one direction, and then the feces and the ammonia gets drawn to the middle of underneath the elevated smaller sump. And then there's a pipe there which is attached to the submersible pump, which then pumps the ammonia and the fish feces from the center of the sump up to the media beds on the outside. Now the inner sump is elevated on legs, so it's standing above that fish feces and ammonia, which is now working on centrifugal force and being pulled to underneath it, which is being drawn up from that pump to the media bed. So the elevated tank is what we call the inner sump, and within that inner sump there's another submersible pump which feeds up to a T, which feeds out to the left and to the right to supply fish tanks on the left and right hand side of the sump. And so that water in that middle sump is water that's returned from the DWC. So it's coming back from the DWC, feeds into the middle sump, clean water. The water's completely free of nitrogen and ammonia and fish feces coming back from the DWC. So that's water's very clean, and it's elevated so it doesn't get affected by the ammonia and the fish feces that's underneath it. So that water gets pumped directly back to the fish, and then that water from the fish tanks gets taken back down through the cycling system back down to the sump, and it just continues in that cycle. So it separates the fish feces and ammonia from the clean water coming back from the DWCs, which gets pumped directly back to the fish. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. What
So
types of, go ahead.
Sorry, Stephen.
No, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. What type of cannabis products are you making? Are you just selling flower? Or are you making hash or edibles, or what are you making out there?
Yeah, at the moment we only licensed to grow cannabis and pack flower and export that flower. Things are very slow moving in Africa, so we've also now just been allocated a license to do an extraction, but we ourselves personally on the premises may not do the extraction. We have to send the trim to a laboratory in Johannesburg who are licensed with SAPRA, who's our licensing body in this country, to do the extract for us and then to convert that into distillate or isolate to be exported. But we may not do the extraction ourselves. So, you know, for ourselves and our on site, we do our own small recreational extracts, but nothing commercial as of yet. We're not allowed to at this stage.
What is how big is your farm? Someone asked in chat.
The actual land size is only 25 hectares, and under aquaponics we are under 1,800 square meters under aquaponics. And as soon as we get the aquaponics and the cannabis working well together, we're going to expand on the aquaponics, as we're on aquaponics license. So we want to expand on that and become purely aquaponics cannabis based is the big picture idea.
I'll definitely have to help you out with that.
Yes, you will, please, Stephen.
Somebody asked in chat, export question mark?
Yes, we may only export our cannabis. It's not open to any kind of local sales or anything local. I do believe it'll open up in the next couple of years for recreational, but until then we're very limited as to what we can do with the cannabis.
So what countries are currently are you exporting to? I guess maybe that's the better question.
Yeah, we're going into Europe at the moment, but only small amounts. But our biggest offtake at the moment is to Australia.
Okay, yeah, a lot of companies when I was over in Africa were exporting to Australia, and then from there it was a lot of times it was headed back to Europe just because of the way that the laws work, or staying in Australia depending on where it is. But yeah, definitely interesting to see things taking off, man. Let me look here at some of the other questions we have in chat so far. Are these tanks or silo rims what makes up the watertight bottom?
The DWCs or the actual sump? The DWCs are made up of a tarpaulin, the kind of tarpaulin that you would use on long distance trucks to cover their load. So they're watertight, and then they're liners that fit into a brick based foundation, and then we fill that with the water. And the fish tanks are basically just plastic tanks that have been made up by a water tank company that have now patent for the components for aquaponics.
For a lot of you guys that don't know, in South Africa, a lot of times too, the other way that they'll do these is, in fact, you know what? I forgot. I got a whole video on it. I'll just show you guys. But in South Africa, they have these temporary swimming pools that they use a lot as well, that make really good fish tanks. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yes. Yeah.
Let me pull up the video from Zim real quick just to show that design.
They use those a lot in aquaculture in South Africa. Yeah. Have you ever used a product called Biodyne?
Biodyne, yes, I've heard of it.
I'm using that in my systems now recently, and I'm seeing a marked improvement in my water quality and clarity. I just wanted to mention that because I always felt that I was lacking something in my biology. I always just had a sense of murkiness. It wasn't that the water wasn't clear, but I always had excess floaters of fish feces and too much algae on the sides of the rafts, and algae build up on the air lines and also the air stones. But now that I've added the Biodyne, and this is not a marketing ploy, it's just something that I'd like to share with you because it's cleaned up everything. It's cleaned up my air stones, my air lines, the biofilm, even on the inside of my pipes. It's cleaned up that there's additional microbes that seem to work very well with the microbes in aquaponics. And I haven't studied it. I've just added it to see what the difference is. And I also added it to see if it would make a difference to the arsenic, unknowing that I was adding arsenic. But I just wanted to add that it's actually made a huge difference to the quality of the plants in my system as well. So that's why I just wanted to ask you that question, Stephen.
So this is a micronutrient blend of microbes. I'm not micronutrient, a microorganism blend. I'm sorry, it's been a long day. Microorganism blend. So this would take the place of something similar to like an IMO, maybe not quite as diverse, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see a lot of the different microbial blends doing amazing things. We've often talked about other products like Mammoth P, which grow Sentia or Serta just got a license in South Africa, I believe. Or if they weren't, I know they were talking about it when I was over there. But I know that other phosphorus chelating microbes make an enormous difference in aquaponics, as much as 30 or more % in terms of just, eliminating any need for phosphorus and heavy flowering plants if you have the right microbial complexes. But a lot of the other microbes can have a wonderful benefit to the plant. And hey, if you found a good mix that works well for your stuff, then by all means. We also talk about often on using Korean natural farming methods to kind of supplement, some of the missing diversity that even some of these wonderful products, still do have. You can help fill in those extra gaps just by collecting those microbes on your own property. In fact, that South Africa or Zimbabwe is where I started testing some of that IPMO that Chris talks about, which is indigenous predatory microorganisms. Basically, you make a traditional IMO and replace 30% of the rice with insect frass and or insect corpses, which is more ideal, of your target insect, and then mix that together, put it out into the field and collect that. And you can use that as well for pest management. So, there's all different types of wonderful things with the microbials, and that really is the area of research that aquaponics truly needs more of. Is hey, what is the aquatic food web, and how does that relate to terrestrial plants for maximum commercial production of all different types of plants? And this, anyone that has grown in aquaponics knows it tastes better. The terpene and flavonoid expression is dramatically increased in aquaponics, and we can directly see that map it out with cannabis. We have to test all of our stuff, which is nice because it helps us map out a lot of these precursors and what exact nutrient ratios need to be for maximizing, and microbial families need to be present to maximize a lot of these secondary plant production. And that applies not only to cannabis, but to other essential oil producing crops of value. Anything else that's going to produce, lavender, linalool, or anything else that's out there that's going to produce a valuable compound.
Absolutely. And my consultant is actually doing a lot of work with the University of Rhodes in Grahamstown, and actually digging deeper into the understanding of the microbes in aquaponics, because it's all fine and well to say the microbes do this and that, but they need to now pinpoint what microbes do what, and this is the work that they're doing now, and I'm going to learn a great deal from them from that study too, I'm sure.
Very cool. But is there any other microbial secrets that you figured out? Obviously, we can say that this is definitely a win with the. I
haven't, Stephen. Just the Biodyne. I'm very excited about the Biodyne because I can visibly see the vast difference it's made. The additional microbes to the biology in my systems is just fascinating. So I really am elated about that. That's why I just wanted to bring it up to you.
Is it the 401 that you're like on?
Yes, it's the 401 and the 301 as well. I'm also using it in my worm teas. You know, I was making worm teas all along and adding worm teas to my systems, but I've been using all of the waste from the aquaponics to add to my worm farms, and obviously I've been collecting PM in there as well, so putting PM back into the system. So now we've discovered a sort of a double fermentation process to get rid of that powdery mildew. But I'm also, the Biodyne is certainly helping in the worm teas as well. So I don't want to go on too much about the Biodyne, but it's certainly helping me. So that's why I'm talking about it so much.
Sure. Here's the other one he was talking about. Lactobacillus, that same stuff that we were talking about before,
Yes.
is another great way that you can apply as a foliar in order to consume powdery mildew. It's one of the best things that you can make and spray on your plants as far as knocking it back. It does an incredibly good job. And in fact, I would go so far to say if you're growing cucumbers, tomatoes, pumpkins, or not, you know, even tomatoes too, but cucumbers, squash, or anything like that, you want to definitely use it because those plants are much more susceptible to powdery mildew. And you know, it really does a good job. That and silica, making sure you're dosing silica and keeping that maintained.
Do you not find that silica has a tendency to burn in your systems or not?
It depends on the rock that you're using, but generally we find that it usually needs to be dosed, but we usually do that through our pH up regimen. If it's a non-organic certified system, we'll use potassium silicate and calcium carbonate as our alternating pH up. And then if it's an organically certified system, you can use that potassium silicate as a foliar spray. Not that I like to use it for that, but it does work pretty well as well as for powdery mildew, which was the other thing I was going to circle it back on, is that potassium silicate as a foliar spray works really good for PM as well.
Great. Excellent. I see that a lot of advertising going on Instagram about an American product called Dr. Zymes. And I'm assuming that that's just a combination of everything that you've just discussed now.
No, Dr. Zymes is a citric acid and potassium something or other based. It's not silicate. Someone in chat, I'm sure, can correct me on it. Potassium something or other. I can't remember the name of it, but it works really good for PM. I have not found that it works very well at all for insects. I have tried it on quite a wide range of stuff. Now, I will definitely talk to you offline. I have a whole spreadsheet of beneficial insects for South Africa and where to source them from. That'll
Wonderful.
help make life a lot easier. But there's lots. South Africa is really blessed. There's Egypt, South Africa, and Kenya and Nigeria are the only countries that I'm aware of in Africa that produce beneficial insects that you can buy for agriculture. Everywhere else has to import them or, you know, figure it out. So South Africa is one of the BioBees there. I'm trying to remember who else is there. There's 3 or 4 beneficial insect companies that are actually based in South Africa that you can utilize. So you're lucky in that regard.
Yeah, I'm about to start that. That's going to be very exciting as well. Great.
What questions did you have about aquaponics? Is there anything that we can help answer for you?
Not off the cuff, Stephen. The biggest question, which it's been a burning question, was the arsenic and where it was coming from. You know, everything was biological. We were picking up the worst heavy metal that we could perceive. So that was the biggest problem that I've been having, and now I've pulled back completely on that now, and I'm running the systems purely aquaponically to see the difference. So you'll be the first man to know the difference, and I'm very grateful for that. Thank you very much. I don't really have any other questions at the moment that I can think of.
Yeah, that's something that I've seen at a couple of different farms in Oklahoma as well, for people that there was people that were told to kind of go balls to the wall, maxi crop with iron, And then they were also dosing other forms of kelp, or you know, just dosing crazy amounts because they were using that as just the iron source, which can get you into trouble because it's not meant to do that. That's not what that product's meant for. And in cannabis, you know, cannabis in particular will bioaccumulate these heavy metals much easier. And then with the more acidic solution, especially if your pH drifts down more to the lower end of the aquaponic range, you know, down closer to 6, it definitely increases the uptake of those as well. But we've, in almost every case, ran it back to either a kelp extract and excess use of it, or in one other case, there was a media bed where the gravel was very high in heavy metal, and we were able to trace it back to that after doing some additional testing. But because nothing else was showing, you know, they weren't using kelp and they weren't, you know, doing anything else, and we managed to figure out, oh, it was this fine aggregate. There's a couple of companies that are using it in Oklahoma, and I don't really understand why. That it's this real fine aggregate that it's, you know, great if you're going to put it for a walkway or something, but you shouldn't use it as a media. If you are looking for a cheap rock to use for it, and I know that you can get it in South Africa as well, lava rock is great for it. And you were talking earlier about the clay having those porous spaces for bacteria. Those porous spaces for bacteria are actually a good thing. We want those bacteria to harbor and be able to mineralize that fish waste as well. In order to help break it down and have, you know, all that stuff happen. And then, yeah, so that can definitely be beneficial. I know that as long as it doesn't really matter what you're using, as long as it is that the media beds are not leaching anything. So as long as the rock is pretty inert, then it doesn't really matter. But you can get a little bit of extra benefit for more porous stone.
Sure. Stephen, just there is a question. You mentioned that the pH of 6. I mean, I'm running my pH as close to 6 as I can, because that's what cannabis prefers. But you say it's also it takes up heavy metals at that pH. What do you run your systems at?
Sure. So it's not that it causes that problem; it just will increase it if they're present, right? So it's going to help make it easier. But ideally, we run it between 6.4 and 6.8. You know, if we're trying to hold it, you know, perfectly, 6.6 is the number that we're aiming for. But that's really the number that the most amount of nutrients are bioavailable, and then also still happy for the fish. The tilapia really would prefer to have it higher than that. But you know, who cares? Tilapia will grow in a trash can, so it doesn't really matter.
Great.
We had another
sorry. Your thoughts on monocropping in aquaponics? Do you see that as a problem going forward?
No, I don't see any issues with that. I do think that there's a slight benefit to having some additional ones, or having like some auxiliary lettuce beds that, especially if you're going to run the same system in flower, being able to bring those systems online to act as a nitrogen sponge to pull those nitrates down, because those lettuce varietals do not, you know, lettuce doesn't pull much of those other nutrients, right? They mainly pull nitrogen. So what you can do is have separate beds that you just bring online as those ones are coming on into flower. You just switch a couple. That's how I plumb all my stuff. We just switch it so that I can redirect multiple beds and any bed to fish tank, and then you can say, okay, cool, well, I want to bring on a couple DWC beds of lettuce to suck this nitrogen down and bring the, you know, make sure that we don't have nitrogen problems going into flower, and it makes it so that you don't have to lift anything or do anything really. You just move a couple valves, but that can be a great way to sponge it off. And the other thing too is I'm a big fan of dual root zone pots, so we do companion planting in the top of the dual root zone plots, just in order to have additional microbial stimuli. And the idea with that is to increase the terpenes, right? The more beneficial microbes I have in the root system, the more terpene expression I'm going to have. And cannabis only hosts a handful of mycorrhizae. Lots of other plants host many other species, but those mycorrhizae will happily interchange nutrients, as well as you know, other compounds that help stimulate that plant. So by having a couple of extra plants in there, just in the root system, that aren't going to, you know, totally drain, you know, the the nutrients away or become parasitic, can be actually beneficial to the terpene expression of the plant. And that's really where the kind of the myth of the whole planting with other plants comes from, or the whole Kyle Cushman strawberry patch thing. Strawberries are highly mycorrhizal, so that makes sense in that regard, but it's not exchanging DNA, which was originally claimed. We like to joke about that on the show. But strawberries actually have quite a diverse mycorrhizal fungi species they're associated with. So by having those additional mycorrhizal fungi species, you can actually stimulate that plant's immune system more, the same way that, like we've talked about before, terpenes are an expression of the plant's immune system, and we want to stimulate it in as many non-pathogenic ways as possible. So exposing the roots to as many non-pathogenic microbes that are going to benefit the plant is the best way to do that.
That's fascinating. It's fascinating what you just said, how to draw the nitrogen with the lettuce. I didn't think about that. That's fascinating, because I'm seeing that I'm having to actually monitor my nutrition at different intervals of the grow, which I never had to do with the food, but I'm certainly having to do it with the cannabis. So it's fascinating that I didn't think about drawing off the nitrogen. I was thinking about pulling right back on the fish food at flowering to increase mineralization, but I would still have more nitrification going on, if not as much as usual, by pulling back on the feed. But it's fascinating that I can actually draw off more nitrogen with the lettuce like that. I didn't think about it like that. It's fascinating. Thank you, Stephen.
Watercress is another really great one if you want something that you can just throw the seeds in the bed and it'll explode with growth and just suck down nitrogen. That's another really good one as well, just as a sponge. And the resale value on it, especially if you're in an area, British people love spicy greens like that. So that's a really good one that should be easy to resell. But this is just to jump back to the previous topic, you have your terrestrial microbes and the microbiome up here, and the aquatic microbes and microbiome down here. So we're able to kind of get, double up on the different species, because stuff that breaks down minerals up here is different than down here. So while you will have to top water, even if you automate that, just to keep these maintained moisture wise, it works extremely well. This water also goes down and then back up, which works like a diaphragm, which sucks fresh air down through the top of the soil and then forces that air back out, creating a really highly oxygenated zone in the root system, and preventing problems as well as accelerating growth. We get enormous accelerations in growth when everything is dialed in.
It's fascinating, really fascinating. I can see I'm going to learn a great deal from you, Stephen, and your group sessions. It's really fascinating. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Heck yeah. If you need to get going, man, I don't mean to hold you any longer, but if you're wanting to stay, you're more than welcome to.
No, that's fine. I'm hundreds. I'm perfectly comfortable where I am. Thank you.
Okay, just making sure. See if what other questions we have here. What unique varieties are you looking forward to growing that maybe you haven't grown yet that are from Africa, or is there ones that maybe you haven't quite popped the beans yet because you want to make sure you got everything dialed in first or anything? I know I, for one, am super excited about that skunk #1. I think that and probably half the people listening.
Yeah, that skunk #1 it originates back to the early 80s, and there's a whole discussion going on at the moment on YouTube with a guy called Blue Skies Vienna Skunk and Old School Chronic. And Old School Chronic is based in America, and Blue Skies Vienna Skunk is based in the UK. And they're both working with old school genetics, and they're on YouTube having a discussion about the skunk and the roadkill skunk and the old school genetics. And it's fascinating. I've actually acquired myself some of the roadkill skunk seeds from Blue Skies Vienna Skunk, and I'm about to pop them. But they're more roadkill skunk, apparently, from what I'm seeing all over Instagram. And he's pushing it very strongly. And the seeds are, or the genetics are in America and Canada. they're all over the world at the moment. So it's a great collaboration of growers working with this guy's genetics, and I'm keen to pop them in to see what they have in their terpenes. They're apparently a broad spectrum of terpenes, and then I'd like to breed selections of that roadkill skunk to the skunk number one. This skunk number one is it's a very popular brand, strain, sorry, but it's also been tagged as being a cause of psychosis in the UK because of its strength. But that doesn't seem to make sense to me, because you get a lot stronger strains coming out of the States and Canada, where this skunk number one only goes to about 26% THC at its ultimate. You're getting much higher THC counts from American strains and Canadian strains. So I'm not too sure about that psychosis part. But the terpenes and the flavors on the skunk number one are incredible. You do get a slight skunky whiff, but you also get a fruity flavor. And so it's also been nicknamed Exodus cheese. So it's skunk number one, Exodus cheese. And there are many seed companies who made their own Exodus cheese, but it's not this particular one. This is a particular original cut from the skunk number one mother from the early 80s. And I'm very privileged to have it. She's a very easy plant to work with. She's very versatile. She's adapted to the climate on the coast here, and she just produces beautiful flower, and consistently beautiful flower. So she's also adapted to the humidity on the coastline. So it's certainly a product that the strain I'm going to go work with going forward, and I'm going to breed it to the skunk that I've got from Blue Skies Vienna skunk. So skunk's making a big comeback, and people are trying to find it. But I'm seeing, old school Chronic as well in the States. He's now selling seeds on Instagram called red hair skunk. So there are certainly lots of derivatives of skunk all over the world, but that roadkill skunk is the one that everyone's looking for, and hopefully everyone's getting it now. So it's very exciting.
Very cool. How have you liked your Dutch buckets? I know a lot of people haven't kind of seen an aquaponic setup quite like that before. In fact, let me throw that back up, because your setup's super cool. I'd love for you to kind of walk us through this, because it's quite the unique setup here.
Yeah, the Dutch buckets are, for me, the safest and least volatile grow medium in the aquaponics. Because the buckets are pulsating and working off a bell siphon as the media beds do, it's very regulated, and you have a small submersible pump at the start of your DWC, where the water comes in highly nitrogenated, and so that water that's being pulled into that pulsate is full of nutrients. So that bucket of 20 liters, when the bell siphon releases the water and it drains out, supplies 10 buckets of half a liter every 4 minutes, because that's how long it takes for that bucket to fill up again, for the bell siphon to release. So every 4 minutes it's being pulsed half a liter on 10 buckets. So the pulsators are situated to supply 10 buckets each. So we have them split along the lines as they go. And you can see in that picture, that's how the bell siphon works. And it's obviously elevated, so it all works off gravity. So it's very economical and very safe. And the only problem that I have with the Dutch buckets is the outlets to the runoff pipes sometimes get blocked by roots. Certainly tomato roots, and I've had a couple of cannabis roots also finding their way into there, but easily to unblock. You just pull the bucket out of the grommet and pull the root out and put it back in, and it flows again. So very safe, very easy to use, and the cannabis and the tomatoes love the Dutch buckets. It's very, very effective.
Awesome. Yeah, I hadn't seen that particular layout or design before. I just thought it was interesting with the vertical flood and drain like that with the bell siphons.
Yeah, they work very well, Stephen. They're very neat and effective.
So how many of those does that one bucket feed?
That one bucket feeds 10 buckets, so 5 buckets on either side of it in a line, and then I have another pulsator every 5 buckets further down the line. So they feed 10 buckets each every 4 minutes.
Oh, that's super cool.
Very, very cool, and it provides a nice, safe grow area, and it adds grow areas to your systems. Very effective grow areas.
Yeah, it's definitely a different design. That's really nifty. What are some of the other unique challenges you've found growing in South Africa compared to what you've seen?
Well, the electricity is a big thing for us. Water quality is another big thing. We try and catch as much rainwater as we can, but we're also going through a very harsh drought here, so we're very reliant on the RO systems. Those are basically our biggest challenges: is the water quality and electricity. So we will be changing over to solar in a short period of time soon. We'll be turning over to solar because it's very difficult to run aquaponics on irregular electricity supply.
Do you want to touch on that? Because I think a lot of Americans especially don't know how advanced Africa's gotten on solar. It certainly was a surprise to me.
Yeah, we've been forced to. Zimbabwe were pretty much the leaders because their electricity supply just collapsed. So, and they were on load shedding for like 18 hours of 24 a day. So they had to change over, and pretty much Zimbabwe are all self-reliant now, and that's the way Africa's having to go, to be self-reliant. Eskom, our supply, is also collapsing due to corruption and just no maintenance on the system. So we're being forced to change over, and the government has regulated power supplies, but now eventually they're opening it up to private power suppliers to push more power into the grid. But we're certainly being forced to create our own power going forward now. And it's not a bad thing, because certainly for aquaponics, and if we're going to upscale, we need to have consistent electricity supply, and it's not reliable in this country. So water and electricity are our biggest challenges, and labor. Labor is another challenge in Africa, but having aquaponics now, labor becomes very insignificant.
And I also wanted to point out, you had a woman working in your greenhouse. Most of the more skilled farmers in Africa, at least certainly in Zimbabwe, are the women. You see the women out there working the fields and knowing all the plant knowledge far more than a lot of the men in Africa.
Yes, that's it. That's right, and especially with cannabis. Traditionally, cannabis and beer have been the responsibility of women in the country. They've had to take care of the cannabis crops and also make the indigenous beer for their men. So that's been their role, where the men have been tending the herds of cattle and sheep and goats. So traditionally, that's the cannabis plant is a woman's domain. So certainly, I'd like to train up some more women. And there's a cannabis academy that's just been opened up in the Transvaal, and there are some women going into that academy, and I've asked them to feed some of their graduates into my facility so I can train them up, because there aren't many women cannabis growers, and certainly aquaponic growers there aren't any that I know of either. So something to look forward to in the future as well.
Is there any particular lettuce varietals that you've kind of settled on for your climate there? Or is there any maybe crops as well that Americans or Westerners haven't heard of as much as far as that they might not be familiar with? I know South Africa has all different types of brassicas that are different, and you guys have some different nightshades, those black nightshades, and some of the other cool stuff. Is there anything like that you're growing that's maybe more traditional?
Well, I've certainly tried. There's a succulent called Scaletium, which is used by the traditional witch doctors and medicine people in South Africa, and it's become a commercially viable tea. They make it into a tea, Scaletium tea, and it's quite a relaxing herb. Yeah,
a lot of Americans know it as Kana.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. So that works very well on the media beds and creates a nice cover and the flowers. So I've done that. But otherwise, I haven't done anything else besides really the herbs and the food, and now the cannabis. So, but I'd like to diversify and try things. I'd also like to be able to grow products that could feed Africa, like carbohydrates, potatoes, cabbages. Like you see, I'm very proud of that cabbage that you've got in that one clip. That cabbage, it's taken a long time to grow, so it's not economically viable for aquaponics. But it's impressive that it has grown so beautifully and created such a big head. I'm very proud of it. It's just a cabbage, but it's flawless. There's no insect damage on it. It's just an incredible piece of vegetable that's so organic. I'd love to be able to grow foods that could aid nutrition in Africa, because aquaponics at the moment in South Africa is basically all derived for greens and tomatoes and cucumbers, but not for the African people themselves who require more food like cabbages and potatoes for their diet.
Awesome. Is there any crops that you haven't grown yet that you want to get into aside from cannabis that maybe you just have been focused on other things?
Yeah, I'm determined to grow tubers in aquaponics, but I just haven't done it successfully. But I see that you've done it very successfully. So yeah, I'd like to do tubers to go forward, certainly, and scale up to do production on a large scale of food as well.
Yeah, you can do
aquaponics.
You can do all kinds of root crops. The trick with them is to do wicking beds, or take your media beds and then use cloth pots like the smart pots or the fabric pots, and then put your soil in that, and then stick the very bottom of it just at the top of your flood and drain layer, so that it kind of kisses the bottom when it fully floods for just a minute or two, and then goes back down. And that is how you can set up a bunch of root crops in your bed. So you can grow carrots and potatoes or turnips or whatever it is that you want to grow in your soil, and then they'll actually have that even exterior pressure like you're talking about, so they'll form properly, so they look nice for the farmer's market. Same thing with ginger. That's another one.
Yeah, ginger's a big thing. Ginger's a very big thing. We are growing it, but with difficulty because we're putting it in the stone, so it doesn't grow very easily. But it does it. It wants to grow in aquaponics, but it just hasn't been given the right medium yet.
Oh yeah, you switch that to a lighter media like a peat or a cocoa or a soil mix that's just more aerated and fluffy, like a perlite and soil mix. It works really well. Or even perlite and like we were using experimenting with like crushed moringa pods, and they were like baking them and making them into like these little, basically kind of like a cocoa coir equivalent, because it's super fibrous in a similar way. And they were making like a moringa coir. It was one of the things we were kind of screwing around with in Jamaica, but might be something else that would work well for where you are, because moringa grows like wildfire there.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You've done a lot of traveling, and it's fascinating what you've learned on your travels.
It always amazes me how a lot of the African traditions are alive and well, both in Jamaica and in still in Africa as far as farming, and then how much a lot of that lines up with like Korean natural farming and a lot of the other stuff. If you actually look at the microbial species that they're harvesting, or the base methodology, a lot of times it's super similar, but it was developed opposite sides of the planet. That's something that really fascinates me.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. Excellent.
So how was it to get your licensing and stuff like that down there in South Africa?
Yeah, it was very difficult. So it took us 18 months to actually get the license, and the whole compliance issue we weren't used to. So it took us a few months to get used to compliance, but now we're very compliant. And when the funny part was when the inspectors came to inspect the facility, to give it approval or not, and they'd never seen an aquaponic system in their lives. And they obviously, the local people who never heard of aquaponics. So when they arrived, they're like, what is this aquaponics? So we walk them into the system, and they see the beautiful lettuce and the cucumbers and the tomatoes, and they're like, okay, where's the soil? How does this work? And they said, no, there's no soil. And then they started to eat the fruit off the tomato vines, and they couldn't believe that this delicious tomato, which the juice and pips running down their faces and their throats, and they were blown away by the flavors and the color and just everything about the tomatoes and the cucumbers. They couldn't believe that this was being grown out of stone and just water. So that to them was mind blowing, and they couldn't understand how cannabis was going to be grown this way. So I had to show them the trials that I had done, and it was fascinating to see their reaction. So that was intriguing. But you know, after the inspection, they went back and they obviously spoke to their peers about it. And about 2 months after the inspection, they phoned us and they've asked us for quotes and designs because they're fascinated. They want to get their own systems up and running now. So it really is quite addictive, aquaponics. When you see a system working beautifully and how everything looks so beautiful and crisp and clean, it really is addictive. It just draws you in, and just you can't get away from it once you're in it.
Absolutely. Plus, you know, once it's set up right, like you can go away for the weekend. As long as someone's there to feed the fish, you're all right. Like you don't have to worry about having to hover over your plants quite so much like a lot of these other people do. You know, Marty and I were joking about that the other night. They were like, I'm going to go away for like 3 or 4 days. And my buddy was like, how can you do that during grow season? And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, how are you a slave to your garden? Which is funny. Like, obviously, you know, when you're farming, you're working, you know, 16, 18-hour days, 7 days a week. But once in a while, you need to get off the farm, you know, for your own sanity.
Yeah, you do. But I can't, not from the fish feeding point of view, but because of the power supply. Until I'm up and running with solar, I really can't leave the premises.
Oh, yeah. No, I having lived in Zim, understand that completely. We, Zesa used to give us power from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. and anything outside of that was we were to feel lucky. So
yes, exactly. Yeah.
Do you have to deal with any you know, creatures that we don't have to deal with here? I know that we had occasionally kudu that would come into the field. Do you deal with that or?
No, it's sometimes some rabbits eat the lettuce. Sometimes some small antelope will go into the systems and eat lettuce. You'll come there, you'll see like half a raft of lettuce is gone. But on the rare occasion, especially now with the electric fencing all around the facility, we don't have issues really now. But yeah, I've had snakes in the systems. I've had some tortoises. I've had some big toads. I love the toads because they come into the systems when the crickets are abundant, and because the crickets, they love aquaponics. And then crickets, actually, they can hold their breath for 5 minutes. They can go underneath the raft, and they can go and eat the roots and come back up and breathe again, and then go back after a bit of a breather to eat. So I welcome the toads because they eat the crickets. So we try and keep it biological as much as we can, but yeah, nothing too intriguing other than the snakes and toads.
I was going to say, you can keep your frogmen crickets over there. I don't want them on this. I don't want to have to deal with that. But tell everybody about the species of snakes you have there, because we had all kinds of fun ones in Zim. I'm sure you have all kinds of fun ones there.
Yeah, we have highly venomous snakes on the property. We have lots of puff adders, which I'd say probably the easiest comparison in America would be a rattlesnake. It's probably as venomous, as nasty, but probably a lot lazier. It's a black and yellow snake, and it doesn't move. So you can stand in it and it won't move. It'll just bite you. But they're very camouflaged as well. So they're a nasty snake, and they cause gangrene. So there's that one, and then there's the Cape Cobra, which comes in all sorts of different colors and shades, and they get very big, up to 2.5 meters big. That's big. So those are the two biggest ones. And the ringpulse, which is a black and orange snake, and it's a nasty snake because it actually spits venom, and it also acts dead. It like lies upside down, so children go to it and think it's a dead snake, but it's alive and well, and it bites them. Also a venomous snake. And then up in KwaZulu-Natal, they get the green and the black mambas, which are extremely venomous, the most venomous snake in the world. But we don't get them down here, fortunately. So, and then we also have a lot of domestic snakes as well, which are harmless, the grass snakes, the house snakes. But yeah, they're all part of the biological system in Africa.
Do you deal with boom slangs or the twig snakes or anything like that there?
Yeah, I get lots of boom slangs here. So I breed lovebirds as well. So I've got a lot of birds around my house here. So the boom slangs come, but they're not aggressive snakes. They're beautiful snakes. A very small mouth, but they've got the back fangs, so they'd have to really open their mouth to bite you. But if they do bite you, you are in trouble. But it's very, very rare that they actually bite you. But they're lovely snakes. They get very big as well.
The color on them is so amazing. If you guys aren't familiar with boom slangs, let me find a pretty one. They can be like turquoise. Yeah, they're really pretty. If you ever are in Africa and you're in Harare, they have a pretty big reptile zoo there. Anyways, I was trying to find a picture of it, but these are all just the green ones. Here's one.
We also have some game reserves around us. So sometimes the lion escaped, and you find the lion on the road in the morning, or you'd find a hippo on the beach that escaped from the game reserve that came down the river. And we find them on the beach in the morning. But yeah, very rare occurrences. But yeah, sometimes you do find that.
Yeah.
Beautiful snakes.
Oh yeah. I love snakes, man. That part of the world. I had a field day when I was over there, and I definitely would love to go back sometime and see some more.
Yes, you must please come and see us at the same time.
Hell yeah. I think it's a plan.
Excellent.
What other, is there any other kind of unique things? You talked a little bit about the crickets and stuff. What are the different insect seasons that you have there? I know in Jamaica we had butterfly season in May, and other areas, in the US we have, the butter, our moth season. I know tobacco budworms and tent worms, both are just starting here.
Well, where we are, we don't really have infestations. Like in the Karoo, you'll get the locust outbreaks, and they have like swarms of locusts, and they take out entire plantations. But we don't get that down here. We just get the normal, the small insect issues like you do, the aphids and the thrips. The Belgruder bug is a problem we have down here. It eats all the cabbage and broccoli family, but it devours them. And then there's a leaf miner as well, which devours tomato crops. It's a North African, it's called a tutor leaf miner, and it'll devour everything on your tomato vine, the leaves, the flowers, the fruit. You'll just come in, it'll happen in a matter of 3 days. It'll devour your entire crop in 3 days, decimate it. And that's the North African miner that we have here, which is a big problem for tomato farmers. That's probably the biggest problem we have with crop infestation. And then obviously if spider mite breaks loose in the system, that's a problem. But I find using real RPM product prevents any kind of infestation. So we're lucky that we have access to the real RPM products. And also, aquaponics, being a biological system, has its own antibodies and its own mechanisms to fight off bugs and to keep the plants healthy. If your systems are healthy, your plants are healthy, you shouldn't have infestations.
Very cool. We're just looking at some more pictures of your farm here. Is there anything, I guess, in these pictures that you want to tell us about, or anything else that's maybe unique or interesting that you'd like me to pull up in regards to? The one thing that I haven't mentioned is we get bloodworm in South Africa. I don't know if you have the problem in the States, but in our water tanks,
we get they're little like red larvae. They look like little worms,
Yep.
and they call them bloodworms. And
Yep.
do you get them in the States?
Yep.
And they cause untold problems in aquaponics because they just continue to breed, and once they're in your system, you really can't get them out. If you lift up your rafts, your roots are covered in them. Your systems are they're just boiling in there.
So you
And to
can
get them out,
you can use different organic deworming agents to knock them out. There's a couple of different ways that you can go about it.
oh really?
Yep.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, we
Okay, I didn't know that. I was too scared to put anything in.
One of the things that you can use is Beetle Nut Extract. So you know the stuff that like people in like Southeast Asia use to stain their teeth and get high. They squeeze that out, and it's used as like they'll call it like planarian killer for shrimp tanks or for commercial scale aquaculture for shrimp. They regularly use that to eliminate the little parasitic nematodes that attack the eggs of the shrimps and stuff like that. So you can actually buy it in a commercial form that's designed specifically for that purpose in food quality, stuff destined for human consumption. You can use it even with like, the little tiny neocardinia shrimps.
Yes.
The cherry shrimps and stuff like that. You can use it safely with them when it's dosed as directed. So
and it doesn't affect your microbes.
No, I mean, I don't want to say it has zero effect because I haven't actually solely monitored my microbial populations around the dosing of that product, but I can tell you that I have used it previously when we have had aquatic plant attacking nematodes, not those particular ones, but a different species, and it worked extremely well. But some of the other things you can do in that scenario for something like that, there's definitely some other commercial products that they use for like midge mitigation and stuff like that. The other thing that I would say that might work really well, again, I'm just thinking out, well, if they're an insect larva, but Bacillus thuringiensis might even work. The mosquito dunks, the ones that attack the mosquito larva, the bacteria, that should work on them. The same, it works on fungus gnats, and it works on other stuff that's extremely similar. So that would be another good, food safe option that would have no impact on the mineralization microbes that would knock them out specifically. The other thing too would be in your DWC beds, just throw in some guppies or, some other, live bear, mollies, platies, whatever from the pet shop in the raft beds, and just letting them breed out and feed on them,
And then there's one more issue that I'm sure you probably experience is aquatic water snails.
Yep, they can be a pain in the butt too. The same beetle nut product that I recommended will also knock them out. The other thing you could always do if you wanted to, although you might not want to do it with cannabis in there, but you can do it if you did it in a vegetable system, would be using something like copper sulfate and killing them that way. You just want to make sure you don't overshoot your copper too much. But I don't remember what the ppm is for lethal levels on that, but that would kill invertebrates, your seed shrimps and things like that. Whereas you're not going to affect that part of the aquatic food web by utilizing that beetle nut extract.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Yep. And then same thing too with them, loaches are really good. So you can put in like weather loaches or coolie loaches or any other freshwater appropriate feeder for snails. But those are in the US at least are some of the best ones. And in fact, I know that they are occasionally bred in South Africa because I saw them in Zim at a pet shop.
I'll look into that. Loaches, great.
Yeah, that's their favorite food. Or hey, if you can get some of those African pufferfish from Congo, from DRC or something like that, you can just grow those. They're going to be harder to come by though.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent.
Well,
thank you. I've learned a great deal.
Yeah, I don't want to tie up your whole day, man, but I definitely look forward to speaking with you and talking to you later on. And I very much appreciate having you on. why don't you tell everybody how to find you? I'm going to throw your Instagram up here so that people can find you if they want to follow more about what you're doing.
Yeah, they can follow me on Instagram, _aquaponics. And I post pretty much every day. Trying to grow the family. I'm trying to educate as many people about aquaponics as I possibly can. And I'm also, my mandate is to introduce cannabis to as many people as I can as well going forward.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for coming on, and I certainly look forward to seeing more of your work for sure.
Thank you very much for having me, Stephen. It's been fascinating and educational. I've learned probably what I've learned in 4 years. I've learned probably the equivalent in this conversation with you and your panel this morning. It's been fascinating. Thank you very much for having me.
Anytime, and we'll have to check back in with you in a couple, later on in the year and see kind of how things have transformed. It sounds like you got a lot of stuff that you're, building out and doing all kinds of cool stuff. So I definitely look forward to see how you grow.
Thank you very much. And please don't forget to come and see us when you come to Africa. We'd love to have you around.
Absolutely.
For a period of time. Yeah, it would be excellent. Thank you very much. And I'll be speaking to you often going forward, Stephen, if you don't mind. You're a great source of information.
Absolutely, buddy.
Thank you very much.
Take care, and thanks again for getting up so early. I know a lot of people don't like getting up at 4:30 in the morning.
No, I was very excited. Like I said, difficulty sleeping. I was looking forward to the meeting this morning. Thank you very much.
Awesome. And again, you guys can check him out at Instagram _Aquaponics is his Instagram. So
thank you very much. Have a lovely day.
You too.
Cheers, Steve.
Cheers. All right. That was awesome.
Yeah.
You don't get a chance to talk to people across the pond very often, and it's always nice to get a different perspective and see a whole different side of growing. Also, hey, who knew there's a bunch of old school 80s skunks sitting in South Africa being bred
That's
out.
it, right, man? He was teasing the connection to the strain hunters, right? Like I was going to ask him, like, so what are you working on, man? What's the new?
Right. I'm sure he's got all kinds of stuff he's scheming on that he isn't talking about, but that's all good. That's what we're all doing, I'm sure, What have you been up to? We've had quite the fun shows lately.
Same old, basically. Trying to kind of plug along. I keep threatening to basically do like recorded shows, but I keep basically like, just being busy by everything else in life. So just kind of thinking of their freaking live shows, whatever. But I don't know. It's been fun. It's been an interesting and rewarding thing. Like it's gotten to the point where like a lot of the people they're recognizable, and they, for example, if they know that we're here hanging out, they come and they hang out with us here. And if we were hanging out somewhere else, they would follow us there and hang out with us there. It's been kind of rewarding in that sense, So, you've seen this yourself many times. There's ups and downs with the shows. There's not always like a justification to do it somehow. So and then like when stuff goes south, you're like, why am I even doing this? But anyway, then when there's a dip, there's usually also a wave up. So at least it how do I put this? If you I think put the right energy out, you get it back oftentimes on YouTube. So not always, maybe.
Sometimes too, you get really screwy. Like you'll have an episode and be like, well, this is cool, but like, I don't know. I don't expect this to really, be at the top 10 for the next 3 months. And then all of a sudden that interview or film thing that you did is like, crazy popular. There's a couple of like more obscure interviews that we've done that have been, super, super high on the download list. So definitely interesting times. I know lately we've had a lot of good episodes with Coot and Josh and Chris and all kinds of people. And definitely we should check out Chris's class over at chrischump.com. He's got that awesome online class he's got now, and he's got some other stuff going on. You guys can check out his schedule if you want to take any of his live classes as well, which are super awesome. What else is going on? Marty and I have been doing a lot more filming and stuff like that. We have we're working on a whole new slide deck section now. Everything's been fully edited and put up or close to put up or is in queue, and we'll be going up. We're working on new content. We have the filming of how to build a greenhouse from logs. So he got a mill, and we're building a greenhouse from scratch, or he's building a greenhouse from scratch at his house, and milling all the wood from logs. So basically, if you're looking to like homestead an aquaponic system, especially an aquaponic cannabis system, really is some cool content, and content that I certainly haven't seen around aquaponics. So we thought that would be a super cool content to do. He just dug out the whole thing with the backhoe. And then other than that, just kind of, just trying to, honestly, just worried about my friends out west right now. I see how hot this has been, and I'm just dreading what August is going to look like, you know?
They were talking on the radio today, where I don't remember, I was just driving around, and on NPR, they were saying, some climate scientists were saying that this was actually a fairly freak occurrence, this over 115-degree wave that we had for 3 or 4 days. I hope so. But
it's never gotten to 100. It's never gotten to 121 in British Columbia before.
Well, that's what he was saying, that this is now, first of all, it displays to us what the possible is, because we didn't realize that it was possible before, but this also probably stretches the bounds of possibility in this area, like a rubber band, I think he was trying to say. Maybe I was confusing that with another interview, but still. So that's certainly what I'm concerned about, that there's going to be like something else in August or September or something. Like, this was barely manageable for a lot of people. British Columbia is already reporting like 500 sudden deaths. So there's going to be a lot of heat deaths and everything else. And
we're on July 1st.
Pardon?
I said we have 2 more solid months of 2.5 solid months of summer, you know, like this is, you know, very worrying for my friends out west.
It was a dry, very, very dry spring, I think, for almost everybody on the west. I know Oregon was very dry. I think California's been dry. They're in a mega drought for ages now. Washington and Canada too. So we might have, again, like the West Coast on fire, like it was last year. Like, people don't, you know, if they weren't here, they don't realize how strange it was. Like, the West Coast was on fire, like the whole thing.
No, I wasn't even.
You know, just like know all of it.
I wasn't gonna say it, but since you said it, but yeah, they already said that there was an NPR interview where they talked to the soil scientists to go out and check moisture content and all that stuff as part of the fire service and the forest service, and they said they were at July level dryness in the beginning of May.
Nice.
That's not good. You know?
And there's not likely to be several big rainstorms that will solve the problem or something. Yeah, I was driving around. Mount Hood looks basically bare already. That's pretty unusual. Normally, Mount Hood traditionally was a place that you could actually go skiing in the summer and act like people are like, what are you talking about? Like summer skiing. So you could go until July. You could actually ski in like cut off like shirts and cut off shorts, but it was still cold enough at snow level that you could actually ski. How weird is that? Well, you can't, I don't think that's going to happen this year. I don't know, man. It's weird. Is aquaponics something that will actually, speaking of homesteading and everything else, like, is aquaponics something that can survive into that kind of crazy new future?
I mean, as long as you have your own power source, you know, if you're near a river, you could always run a turbine. There's lots of those little micro turbines now that run on water power, that as long as you have, you know, you're on a hillside and you got a stream, you could pull off of that, or solar power or micro wind turbine. And as long as you built your own microgrid, yeah, you're perfectly fine. You can't run it without power, which is one of the downsides to it, but
Well, I guess you can still have solar. I'm even thinking, as soon as I said it, that probably there's an easy solution. I was thinking about like water temperature, but you probably just chill the water or something, huh?
Well, so like I've seen systems as big as 14,000 square feet run off of, you know, under $300 worth of power per month.
Oh, wow.
You know, it's just the pumps and the air blowers, basically. It's not that much power. Those pumps are only maybe like if you're doing a massive commercial system, maybe 1,000 watts, but most of the time they're like 200-300 watts, 400 watts. It's nothing compared to what your lights are or anything else that most people are doing. So, you know, it's not all that much. And if you're real worried about it, you can get DC pumps. You know, they use a lot of DC pumps for bilge pumps for boats that are designed to work for decades in seawater, right? So sourcing all that stuff is super easy, especially DC powered stuff, because it's all made for boat electrical, right? So you have this huge library of ready to use parts that's easy to come by, you know, used or new, that's, you know, pretty indestructible because it's designed for seawater, you know what I mean? So it can be a great way if you are looking to kind of figure it out yourself. And we talked about too when the gentleman from Grow Together was on Charles, about how, you know, a lot of times too, you can find someone that had, you know, hippies from the 70s, 80s, or 90s living in the house, and someone moved in that's conservative and rips the thing off and sits it on the curb. You can pick those up all day long in Colorado and California. If you cruise around and sit on Craigslist for a couple of days, you'll find them for free. You know, especially if you're trying to really put together a community garden or really put together a homesteading thing, or you know, you're really motivated. I know that when we worked at the Aquaponics source, Robbie and I built that entire solar system for free off of Craigslist in Boulder. And we got solar water heaters and solar panels all for free because we just drove over and picked them up. One of them we had to take off the roof, which is a bit sketch, but we did it.
I don't understand that mentality. Like, you just bought a house, there's a solar panel on it, and you say, "No, fuck this shit, I don't want it here." Like,
it's their way of sticking it to Al Gore.
Is that what it is? It's just a vicious hatred of, like, I mean, that's just excessive, man. Like, I just don't even understand. Like, I don't like country music, but if like
people
a Waylon Jennings statue was in front of my house, I'd be like, well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, but people put like oil injectors into their engines so they can blow coal. Like,
right, that's true.
You're talking about people that are highly uneducated and incapable of critical thinking.
When I see the people rolling coal, man, I'm just like, what part of you is not an asshole? Like, everything they're doing is just to basically for show.
I had a dude one time. I was in my car, my old Nova when I used to have it, and this guy rolled coal, and I had my windows down. It went through my car, so I had like a root beer bottle. So I pull up to him the next light and winged him right in the fucking head. Like, fuck you, dude. There's no reason to do that shit. Absolutely not.
Seriously. Like, I don't know. I'm just gonna smogify you because I'm an asshole. Like,
there's no point to it, you know. I don't get it.
You could at least say the dude burning out, like, okay, it's kind of fun because the dude's screeching, whatever. It's still annoying because it stinks and it's like super smelly, but I don't know. At least that's kind of fun. But if you're just blowing coal, like, or rolling coal, fuck, whatever. I don't even care to know what it's called. Yeah, I find it so douchey.
Yeah, it's I don't get it. Also, I just wanted to say thanks to the community. We actually broke $1,300 the other day for Stoney's relief fund. We'll make sure we have a link in the comments here. But we've been really, you know, a big thank you to the community that's helped donate for that. I wanted to say thanks for that because they broke another milestone for that. So thank you, everyone. It's made a big difference for his wife and their farm. So.
Only a year and a half ago, we were talking to him. At least I was talking to him at the Indo Expo. Before COVID, like, we probably all caught COVID there. Dan and I didn't, or at least, I don't know, maybe we're immune, but Stoney was there. I think he caught it there. None of us thought that he wouldn't be around a year later, a year and a half later.
Yeah.
Shit, man.
That happens, man.
Right.
I have a friend of mine that's holding some of the slurricane cut we got from him, so we're gonna grab some of that and get that going again. Once I get moved, it's gonna be one of the strains I'm gonna grab for my mom room. Because I'm sure there's quite a few homies that were his friends that want that cut, so I'll make sure that they can get access to it.
Another one of those lessons too, by the way. Every time I ever hear about, you know, somebody passing away, when you think, oh, too young, well, what is that, honestly? But you know, another reason never to really like be mean to people, because you never really know if it's going to be the last time you talk to somebody. You know what I mean? You might have said something in even as a joke, but maybe it'll be the last time you will have spoken to them about it. And you'd be like, well, fuck, that's the last goddamn dumb thing that I said. You know, like, why not be just kind, decent, whatever else, so that, like, if you do hear a terrible story, if nothing else, you can think, hey, you know what? That last time we talked, it was a good thing. I don't know. Maybe that's a small thing, but I think about it sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, how many times someone has been tucked out of the world, and I thought, oh, this last thing I said was, I don't know, grocery list, just something stupid, you know? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I went fishing with him. We went fishing. We caught a giant spoonbill that was like 5 feet long. That was freaking awesome. They caught a bunch of bass and catfish and a couple of gar. And man, we just had a blast a couple of times hanging out because they were an hour or two away from where I was, and they were just moving to Oklahoma, and we just kind of hung out and spent some time on the river, just shooting the shit, having beers, and shit happened in March, and that was that.
Wasn't it a drunk driver actually?
Yep.
That's grim. But congrats to the people that are donating and helping his family.
Thank you everyone that has donated to the link for a few meets. All that money goes directly to his wife Lauren. So big thank you to everyone that's done that. What you got any guests coming up on your show or anything else interesting coming up?
You know what? I think the guest for this week is actually open. Am I gonna think here for a second? No, I think it's open. We've had killer guests. Honestly, thanks to you, thanks to Coot, thanks to a couple people. We've had some absolutely spectacular freaking guests on my show. So how do I put this? Like, I don't know. I've been trying to figure out who to get. I'm babbling right now, but basically what I'm trying to say is like, how do I say this? I have this idea where basically we'll have like 2-3 guests in a row, and then basically have a show essentially where we kind of get together and talk about whatever. The reason being is that you've said this before on my show, like it's kind of this free flowing place, and I've noticed where it is kind of free flowing, the show weirdly works better. Like there's more viewers, there's more thumbs up, there's more everything. So it's like I'm always mindful of like I really like the shows where I have a guest, there's an interview, the structure and everything else. But like I always have to kind of dial it back a little bit and let the freedom come back into it, because that seems to be the kind of the best shows, or at least according to the audience. I don't know. So whatever, like I said, like every time I do have like a month of guests, and that's kind of what we have, I'm like, all right, let's dial it back and have like, I don't know, just 1 week where we shoot the shit or something. But no, man, how do I put this? Thanks to you, especially, I've started to get really ambitious about who we can get. Like people used to talk about, oh, get Mendo Dope. And I was like, oh, they probably won't come on. But like, now they might, you know what I mean? Like we've actually had some pretty good shows. Like maybe we can invite them, they actually come on. You've said Breeder Steve, we've got to have him on the show one of these days.
Oh, yeah, we'll get Steve on, don't worry.
Dude, that's going to be fantastic. And he's like very well requested. Like just about every time we ask, who do you want on the show? It's pretty much one of them. There's no shortage of people we can ask. I guess that's the nice thing. There's a lot of nice people too. How do I put that? Like, I noticed that in the past, I didn't want to replicate the same kind of. No offense to a lot of other shows. Everybody has their right to do their YouTube thing. Like, and I'm not going to criticize the way people do things, but I didn't want to copy everybody else, and so I didn't really want to have the same conversations with, let's say, I don't know, nutrient companies or whatever. The stuff that I'm not super duper interested in, or I don't know, silicon manufacturing companies or whatever. So like for me, it's more interesting to talk to people who honestly I can talk to on just like a normal level and ask them questions. Like I'm interested in what they do, so for example, I'm interested in what Breeder Steve breeds, because he's Breeder Steve, he just does all kinds of cool stuff. And I have a little tangential touch with the Ruby Jack. I think has the sweet pink grapefruit, like a couple different grandparents back. So of course I want to ask him about that, on and on. And it's fun basically that the show has kind of gravitated. I mean, I guess I've gravitated it that way, but I guess I'm trying to say, like, I've enjoyed that kind of discussion where we basically get to, without too much pressure, we're not necessarily selling the next newest, greatest thing. That's been fun. I think I have to say that the fact that people come on basically mostly to shoot the bull, and then, yeah, also, hey, buy my seeds. Miss Jill came on. She's not coming on as a nonprofit entity or something. She's not coming on just for giggles. But she very much talked to us just on a human level, conversation wise. We were able to kind of just get to know her, and then also get to know, hey, Miss Jill seeds are amazing. So anyway, I'm babbling, but it's been fun that we've been able to do that, and that's actually been thanks to people like you, thanks to Smashed got Miss Jill on the show. There's been some really good people that kind of brought the people on the show, so that's been really fun. It's hard. People don't realize how hard it is. You realize how hard it is to get guests. Like people don't realize how hard it is to honestly, like, first of all, you got to put yourself out there, which, everybody is different. Not everybody likes to get rejected, because if you do, you could email 10 people and all of them know you. You're still going to get rejected by a few of them. They're going to blow you off. They're going to ignore you. They're going to leave you on read. You're like, oh, so that's our friendship. It's very illustrative when you basically start to see stuff like that. You just got to kind of let it all go. You got to not take any of it personally. You know what I mean? And you have to realize that you invite 10 people, you might not get 9 people back. You know?
The other thing too, sometimes you get super interesting guests that that can be you want on the show, but they can't come on the show because it's cannabis related. There's 2 guests that are crazy knowledgeable on microorganisms and the mineralization of nutrients in aquaponics in regards to like aquatic microbiomes that are like Jedi level stuff, but they won't come on my show because it's cannabis. They're not aquaponic people. They're people that did a lot of work in the planted aquarium world, but their level of understanding is just so far ahead of. They're kind of like the like Elaine Inghams of like the aquatic food web, but I can't get either one of them on the show because we talk about cannabis and it will fuck up their brand. They can't deal with that because they deal a lot with Asia, and Asia will immediately blacklist you for that. So you can't deal that. So, and I understand, but sometimes people have weird restrictions.
As now that you say that, I'm kind of laughing to myself because I'm like, all right, here's the difference. You don't have that problem. You're Potent Ponics. When you call people, they freaking respond. Like, how do I put this? Not everybody responds to Fumidor and the flavors and his friends. So it's one of those kinds of circumstances. I'm still basically in that scenario. I very much do have to rely on my friends that basically have connections. So when I ask people, hey, would you like to come on my show? I don't always get a response. But I guess I'm trying to say, like, you can't take it personally. How do I put this? It's been very interesting learning that process. Inviting people, getting them to schedule on a specific date. I'm gonna freaking stop putting my foot in my mouth. I'm gonna shut the fuck up.
Oh, you're fine. It is very hard to have a consistent show every single week and have guests lined up, and then also too, like this, a lot of times guests have like different shit come up, or you find out that the other week, Chris Trump happened to be teaching somewhere or consulting somewhere where his connection was fuck all, so we had to postpone him. It just happens, right? So being able to like have a couple of cool people that you can call and be like, yo, my guest canceled, can you come on tonight? That can kind of do it semi-regular, that can be ringer when you need them to be, is always good too. And that can be kind of hard to find people. And then sometimes it can be hard to kind of balance some of the personalities, especially if you're doing a panel show. The more people you have, the more complicated it gets.
Right.
And then sometimes people on your guests will say things that people get mad at you about, which I've dealt a lot with over the years. So
that is absolutely something that I've learned, even on my tiny little channel, that basically some people, of course, treat you normally because, of course, they realize it's just a YouTube show and they just talk to you like a friend. But you do get this thing where people kind of treat you as like the statue that they can kind of post-it notes on or whatever. So if somebody says something they don't like, they basically take it to you as if you're, I don't know, like, what are you going to do about it? What am I going to do about it? Like, somebody else said something that I don't like, what, I'm going to tell them to shut up? I mean, what do you want me to do? Like, not have them on the show or something? Like, that's come up a bunch of times. I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you. What do you want me to do? It's just like they're basically just tagging you like a statue. They're just leaving graffiti, I think I've realized. So you just kind of like have to hear them and like kind of respond semi-appropriately and then just let it go. And then just rub it off.
The other thing that can be kind of weird is people end up having this like very one-sided relationship where like they've listened to hundreds of hours of you talk and then you don't know who they are.
Right.
And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I just mean that like we haven't met in person, so I don't, and people feel like they like are trying to say, like they just are very open and stuff like that immediately, and you're always sometimes.
You just cut out. Fucking Comcast. If he comes back, I don't know if you guys can hear me or if you can't hear him. I figure it's his internet, but my internet's been okay lately. If the picture goes dark, we'll know it's his. If he was talking about, that's come up once or twice. The people were really nice about it, but somebody would be like, oh, such and such, whatever. I don't even remember what the circumstance was, but oh, yeah, it was his internet. hopefully he'll be back here in a second. Hold on, folks. What was I going to say? Yeah, so far so good. Actually, people were quite nice about it. They'd be like, again, I don't remember the context, but they'd say something a little bit overly sherry, and then realize like, oh my goodness, sorry, I didn't realize. I've been watching your show for I don't know 6 months or a year or something. So how do I put it? Yeah, it's not like they know everything about me, but they know everything that I've said on the show. For example, they've listened to me like I think one dude was a truck driver maybe. So basically, like, has nothing but time to listen, you know what I mean? So just like constantly listen to every single show, like, oh, you said such and such on such and such episode, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't remember that. I don't know. I had many shows. And again, thankfully it was, a super chill conversation. It was like, oh, I forget that, I've watched so many shows and you barely know me. It is kind of a funny relationship, I have to be honest. I guess I'm just going to keep bullshitting. I don't know until Potent texts me that maybe he wants to shit can the show or something. Sometimes Coot comes on. I think maybe he won't come on tonight. I don't know. It might just be Potent and me bullshitting. So maybe he's cutting it. Maybe he's cutting it for the show, but we're going to give it for a little bit for a second. I can talk. We're going to give it a second, folks. I'm rolling up a joint here. This is me selfishly talking. This is something I bred. This is not the picture in the picture graph thingy. This is Morgana that I bred. But I guess I'll light it. That might be him telling me something. Let's see what he says. Be entertaining for 2 minutes. I'm going to be entertaining for 2 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, a priest, a rabbi, and I'm kidding. What was I going to say? You and I have, El Dabo is asking if I try to get Joel from North Star. Very much so. North Star, I think, is a little bit shy coming on YouTube. It's hard to imagine that people can be shy. Like, people are always surprised about Ms. Jill. Like, what? Really? She's shy? No way. Ms. Jill is actually legendarily shy on like live streams. In public and stuff, she's not that shy. But at least I don't think so. But definitely on like YouTube, stuff like that, she's super shy. I get the feeling that maybe North Star is a little bit apprehensive about coming on live, because I've asked him and he was a little bit like, I would like to, but we'll see. Would very much like him on there. I very, very, very much respect his genetics. In fact, I honestly still probably have quite a bit of his genetics. The Bedrock Boogie comes from him that I have. What else? Several things that I used to have that I don't have anymore, not because I didn't like them. I actually really wish I still had them. The Roswell came from him. I really, really wish I hadn't gotten rid of that. I think the Sugar Tits might be from him. It's either from him or Badger. I can't remember, honestly, either way. But I'm a big fan of North Star. He has one of the biggest libraries that I know of. There's probably other libraries that are bigger, for all I know. But dude, the guy has everything. He has everything from Subcool, everything from I don't know, all the classic Bay Area cuts. He's got dude, I can't even think of what he's got right now. I guess I'm nervous. He's got a ton of stuff. Go look at the menu. Cool old stuff too. Cool old school stuff. He'll always pull out like Alcatraz OG and all kinds of cool Calio crosses, but Calio crosses that are weirdly good. Everybody's sick of them, but they actually end up being good. That's it, Perpetual. It was me, man. I hit the exit button and basically kicked Steve out of here. I was like, fuck, it's gonna be the freaking Fumidor show, man. We're gonna talk about me. For folks that don't know me, it's a little bit like Doctor Who. There was a transmutation kind of thing, and I am now the second Potent Ponics. Hey, you. People are like, wait, where's the dreadlocks? If you're familiar with Doctor Who, you're probably dying of laughter right now. I don't have a sonic screwdriver. What would Potent Ponics have? He would have a sonic. Well, Potent Ponics would have probably something else, but Potent Ponics would probably have a sonic pH meter, I would assume. Maybe. Actually, I don't know. He never really talks about pH meters. What would he have? He would have a sonic sonic dreadlock roller, maybe? Sonic fucking internet, he says. Well, hold on. Let me read his message. He might be telling me to take over his channel forever and like Napoleon, take over Russia. They say don't do it in winter, though. So, oh, you know what? They say that, honestly, we can fucking kill it. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to freaking light this joint. Is it too, yet? It's too late to do 420, but I guess light the joint with me. We're gonna plug a couple things and then we're gonna fuck off for the evening. But thanks very much for hanging. I know Putin would be very happy to have seen you. He wants me very much to plug. I'll also link this if I can. Here, let me see if I can copy and paste this. Please, my friends, go if you would like to go check out. He has a variety of aquaponics classes. He and Marty, I believe, both. Oh, copy and paste the wrong thing. Thank you for not posting that. Okay, hold on, I'm just gonna shit up. So for all your aquaponic class needs, please go to apmjclass.com. That's with 2 S's. I think his nutrient website is also the same thing, but apmjnewts.com. So if you need, I think they call it, whatever. I'm not really an aquaponic grower. I just kind of play one on TV right now. Solubilized nutrients, I think they have the whole shebang, the whole gamut, all the stuff you might need, the calcium and the fucking nitrogen stuff and all that shit. He has all of it over on apmjnewts.com. They have also all those awesome classes, tons and tons of stuff. He said there's more and more coming. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks very much for hanging. Thank you for, oh my holy goodness, what was the guest's name again? He's _ aquaponics. His name was, I'm losing it right now. His name is Sweetwater's Aquaponics from South Africa. Shannon, it was actually a pleasure to listen. Thank you very much, folks, for hanging. And